welcome the Fantasy Fran. With me today, sent from the heavens, Eddie Bevins, our senior analyst right here at fantasyfran.com. You may know me as Sports Crazy Chris Barnes, and we have a great program for you today. But we're here to talk to you about the top 5 defenses for Week 13. And Eddie, tell me about the number 1 defense we have on our list today.
Yeah, I think Fran's number 1 defense this week is Baltimore. They're pretty much at the top of the list every week. It's not really a surprise.
Pretty much.
But this week, it's as good as ever. They are playing Cleveland. And they're just a little pop gun offense, really. I mean, Colt McCoy is kind of struggling. Their running backs, Peyton Hillis, finally came back. But what did he really show last week?
Not much.
I mean, Montario Hardesty might still a little dinged up. Chris Ogbenaya has been a little bit. The receiving core is nothing spectacular. Add that to Baltimore's defense that sacked Alex Smith 9 times on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It could be ugly.
It very well could be. It very well could be. And the number 2 defense played Baltimore last week, and they really have showed up this year. We have San Francisco going up against St. Louis. San Francisco's played great defense. Justin Smith on the line has played tremendously, all-pro type year, and Patrick Willis is the beast that he's always been. But I think they're number 1 or number 2 against the rush this year. Obviously, that's huge going up against St. Louis, where pretty much their only weapon this year has been Steven Jackson. Sam Bradford's kind of taken a step back. He hasn't really showed up quite as well as people thought that he was. So we think San Francisco is really going to show up as the number 2 defense. Talk to me about number 3, Pittsburgh.
I mean, Pittsburgh, they are just solid all around. They do everything. They can stop the run, they can stop the pass, they can get after the passer, they can create some turnovers. I know there are some questions about Troy Polamalu this week, but you really don't need to worry about them week in, week out. They're going to be right at the top. Cincinnati, they're looking pretty good on offense this year. Andy Dalton's certainly looking good, but he's a rookie. And, and he's got a rookie wide receiver. Is their other big playmaker on offense? I think they'll struggle a little against Pittsburgh. And Cedric Benson has looked really good against really bad teams, but every time he's gone up against a good defense, he's just very mediocre. Nothing really to write home about. So I don't really expect him to do much this time either.
Well, very good. And Chicago at number 4 is a solid pick. You know, Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher have probably had one of their best seasons as a tandem, if for no other reason that they both stayed healthy.
Yeah.
Urlacher's had a history of problems with injuries. Briggs has been nicked up here and there. These guys are healthy and they're playing as good as they ever have. They've really done a great job at getting after the passer. They've forced a lot of errant throws by quarterbacks. They've picked them off and taken them to the house. A great defense going up against Kansas City, whose star running back is Battle or Thomas Jones or Dexter McCluster. Give me a break. Also, we saw Tyler Palko last week have a decent day. Kept his team in it against Pittsburgh, but goodness gracious, whether they start Tyler Palko or Kyle Orton, I was talking to Fran about this the other day, he doesn't think it much matters.
No.
Because this defense, this Chicago defense, is going to get after whoever is back there.
Yeah.
And they are going to force them to put the ball in the air. And guess what? They're going to force double coverage on Bo. And they're going to force guys like Breston and Jonathan Baldwin and, goodness gracious, Leonard Pope to make plays. Advantage Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the number 5 defense, because this is a defense not many people have this high.
Right. I mean, it's a defense that's really come on strong as the season's gone along. At the start of the year, Denver looked pretty mediocre on defense.
Without a doubt.
We had them, fairly high expectations coming into the season, and they didn't really meet it at the start of the year. But the last 6 weeks, Tim Tebow's taken over on offense, and suddenly the defense is playing better. That defense has kept them in the game every game except for the Detroit game, and that's been why he's been able to take these fourth-quarter comebacks, because the game has been played in the teens, single digits teens every week. Von Miller, Elmas Dumerville, Brian Dawkins, Champ Bailey, these guys are all playing really good ball right now. And going up against Minnesota, that's a good matchup for them this week. I mean, Christian Ponder, another rookie quarterback, he's playing pretty well, but he's still a rookie. And rookies are going to have those moments. And there's no Adrian Peterson to back him up right now. And that running back is really, I think, helped Christian Ponder grow a lot this year. Not having that suddenly is going to make things a lot harder like it did last week against Atlanta.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I want to ask you, Chris.
Okay.
One of the defenses that people have been talking about a lot the last few years, really, is the Jets. Every year, I mean, that's the Jets. That's their motto is defense, defense, defense. What have you thought about their defense this year?
Wow, I haven't thought much about their defense, frankly. It's really struggled. Everybody, when you talk about the Jets' defense, what's the very first thing they talk about? Revis Island, right? Well, Revis Island has had some ferries and boats and all different kinds of things to get people there because it has not been the Revis Island of old. We've seen numerous receivers go ahead and put up numbers. And frankly, Stevie Johnson last week, he had a touchdown, and if he didn't drop balls, he would have had an even bigger day. Revis Island is not what it once was. But the other thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, Eddie, is that they're not getting after the passer quite as well. Can you name me one or two guys on their front four that have had any kind of impact?
Not this year.
Not at all. Now, they've done a decent job at somewhat stopping the run, but that's mainly because of the play of their linebackers. Bart Scott is Bart Scott, and he's always going to be great. But these last couple of weeks, we saw Bart Scott kind of go down with some concussion symptoms and things like that. This defense is not the Jets' defense of old, and frankly, I think that there's some yards and some touchdowns to be had against them.
Interesting.
But I got a question for you, and it's a question that a lot of people have had. And Ndamukong Suh gets suspended for 2 games.
That's right.
What does this defense do now? Because he's pretty much been the heartbeat of this defense.
I mean, he is. He is the emotional leader and the physical leader. I mean, he is the single best player on that whole roster outside of maybe Calvin Johnson. And he really sets the tone, especially this year. They've been a ferocious defense over the line, so apparently the last few weeks you might have noticed. And right now he's out, at least for this game, probably for another one. The one thing they have going in their favor is that they do have a lot of defensive linemen. I mean, they've rotated 9 guys between the interior and the ends. They have bodies that they can replace Ndamukong Suh with. I mean, they can't replace Ndamukong Suh, but they can use a bunch of guys to try to at least make it not a total wash. And they can always try to get a big game from Nick Fairley. I mean, he's their first-round pick from this past year. Missed the first few games. He's looked okay the last few weeks, but this is his chance to really step up and show his worth because they have a big game against New Orleans. It is going to be tough on defense. So they really need some of those other linemen to step up and fill the gap.
Yeah, and frankly, the only time that we've really seen New Orleans stumble on offense, Drew Brees was sacked 6 times. And if you don't get after Drew Brees, and we saw it this past Monday night, he will pick you apart.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting. But these are the top 5 defenses with a little extra commentary with sports crazy Chris Barnes, and with me today, our special guest analyst, not sports crazy, but you are, but sent from the heavens, Eddie Bevins. He's phenomenal, folks. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to join us back next week, Week 14, right here at FantasyFran.com.